They didn't allow him out in a powered vehicle, did they? Gee.
Well,
Right. Let's
very
go.
good. Okay, guys. So we have an hour today, and
Yes.
I have turned the recording on. So it is November 20th, 2020. This is our 13th DFM Data Core Steering Committee. I'm very happy to say we have made a ton of progress. Move forward with the antitrust policy as per our normal. I'll read this out loud. Neither DFM Data Corp. Inc., hereafter referred to as DFM Data Corp., nor its committees and activities shall be used for the purpose of bringing about and or attempting to bring about any understanding or agreement, written or oral, formal or informal, express or implied, between and among competitors with regard to prices, terms, and or conditions of sale, credit terms, or marketing practices. And moving forward. Okay, our agenda today is we got, I think, a couple of things teed up for everyone. I'm very happy about that. First of all, I'm going to call to order. So we have John Greaves, we have Linda Getz, we have Jeff Hurley, we have Michael Darden, we have Denise McCurdy. With that, we do have a quorum. And we do need a review and approve of minutes from last meeting. That was October 9th. Those were sent back then. It was like a page. So yeah. I'm going to ask for approval to.
Breathe.
Okay. Second?
Seconded.
All right. All right. So first on the agenda, again, we're going to move at speed because we do have just an hour. Michael, I was hoping you could give the team some feedback from your second Texas road trip.
So my second Texas road trip was graced with the presence of the other famous John in my life, John Larkin. And John Larkin lives in Dallas, but I had communicated with him the list of Texas consortium members or Texas Blockchain Council members, and he went through the list and he said, well, I know the CEOs of this one and this one and this one, and he went through his list and had checked, I think, 13 of the 24 names on the list as ones that he could make an intro to. 2 weeks prior to my trip there, he sent out some invitations of the fact that I would be coming to town from the 11th, 12th, and 13th, and he was wanting to schedule an hour's worth of time somewhere on those days. And we scheduled 9 meetings. 2 of them were postponed COVID related and took place this following week, but we have now had all of those 9 meetings, and sorry, Benjamin's in the call with me at the moment. We have had all of those 9 meetings and have handed copies of contracts to 4 of them and discussed the business case with all of them. It was truly a very successful trip. This past week, filled in the 2 meetings that were missed from the week before, which was Transplace and Omnitrack. Neither of them being small players. I mean, frankly, nobody that I've met with on these trips were really small players. Worldwide Express, Mode Logistics, just a really strong ArcBest, and John is now seeing the success of these meetings and wants to set more. So he's engaged, says that our interests are aligned, and is anxious to be able to support them as long as I realize that he has another job to do. In addition to that, I did get some more feedback, though, from our customers of the fact that they certainly do recognize that this is a problem, but they don't yet know how to quantify it, of how much of a problem it is, what the ROI is on being able to clear the phantom data. So in several of these meetings, it has come up about the survey that was previously built by DFM Data Corp and distributed through Inbound Logistics, through part of the media package that we did with them. And we got some response, but not as much as we would have really wanted to. And I think focusing in on the Texas list of companies with a, hey, here's a private branded version of our survey that we can organize your opinions, your survey respondents from your customers, your brokers, your shippers, your carriers, and have the survey break it down for them, but still aggregated across all of them, is the next tactical step to be able to take with each of the DFMs that are in Texas. And one more element on that trip of lessons learned is that there is typically a calculator that these companies are accustomed to creating or using as a measurement of, if I clear this many of these, I reduced my phone call per customer load by this. That's where my ROI break even is. There's indices or elements, or KPIs that have been adopted by different organizations. One of them from ArcBest related to the cost of a support phone call for being able to book a load. And they estimate that it cost them $20 per phone call to be able to support a booking of a load. And if you can illustrate that you can reduce one phone call per order and have an $11 fee for it, then it's a no-brainer for them to be able to do. So several of these larger, more sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar companies that we've been speaking to are saying they're interested in being able to see a cost model that illustrates A, what the IBM fees are, what the hosting fees are, what the support fees are, all of that stuff that you would expect to be able to have from a full, utility layout that's got history. But we don't have all the history yet. But I did discuss with Vic this morning one other topic on this same point of my trip to Texas, which is the fact that the revenue model that we've talked about in the steering committee has been based off of an upfront membership fee and a license fee and a setup fee and a transaction fee. And the transaction fee, we wanted to try to zero in on a number for some marketing material, and we as a team went through some iterations and came up with $11 as what we were going to say was the fee. And it was simple enough for us to be able to make a calculation from, but as I think about it more, and as I've talked with these customers in Texas, I'm feeling like everybody would be okay with being able to pay a little fee for every transaction that takes place. And when they get a benefit, like having the capacity that is no longer available removed from their system, and it's going to save them an hour's worth of work, then they're willing to pay $8. So I kind of think that the $11 number might be the right number, but it might be where we do something like $3 to be able to have the transaction pushed, and then anybody that has it duplicated in their capacity in their marketplace, they pay $8 to have it removed. And by lowering the barrier of the cost per transaction, it makes them feel less pain. But by making it that we get paid $8 additional on every one, if it's posted in multiple places, makes it so that we could also have the higher upside on the revenue. So I haven't modeled it out both ways, but I've talked to Vic Uzumeri about modeling it out both ways, because at the end of the day, this will come to the steering committee. It is one of the things that we identified as the starting point for the working groups of what the fee structure is and how we were to come to that. So my thought at the moment is something like the $3 transaction fee, which we identify as being the cost of the technology and the cost of the hosting and support and a royalty for just being able to do that piece, as was described by Keith, the attorney. And when there's a service that's provided of cleansing that capacity, that there is actually a transactional value to that of that $8.
Yeah, I just got off a call with David, Michael, and one of the things that we were talking about, and I actually recorded it, so I'll shoot it over to you as soon as it populates for me. But the concern that there's already junk data that's put out there for multiple reasons, by brokers, sometimes carriers, sometimes ship. It's already a reality that data is used to game the system. And one of our concerns that I think is important is, what if a competitor started throwing what they knew would be duplicated data onto their competitors' boards just so they would be charged that extra $8 when it was cleansed? How do we protect the community against something like that, the gaming of the system? So that's.
No, I think it's a great question. And I think it's one that each platform is really going to have to be able to recognize that as being a participant in the platform, they have to know who their customer is. I mean, just like in any system of trust, it's a KYC for how they onboarded their customer, shipper, carrier. And the metrics of that we can help them establish across the network by being a utility that's neutral. But I think at the end of the day, it is part of the differentiation of how much pre-screening a DFM does with their customer. If they're getting the exclusive post of their customer and it's not being posted anyplace else, then they got nothing to worry about. But there's several of them that'll be telling you that we're the only ones who get this posting, but they don't know who else they're posting it to.
Right.
Yeah, and there's a lot
no
of
agreement
nuance
and no
here
police.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is.
Yep. Sabotage.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways to game the system, but when you find out who the bad actors are and you're scorecarding the KPIs from the platforms that they're coming from and the origins and destinations of where the loads are coming from, the patterns become clear. This was there, it was deleted. This was there, it was deleted before it was tendered. There's only so many players that do that for so many times before the gaming of the system comes out, in the point where you go, hey, that algorithm looks like it's like phony. How did that number change like that?
Yeah.
Everything that's consummated on this, board seems to show up on these other 5, and it's like a 1-for-1 match.
Yeah, and we have data for it, so yeah. I can show you. If I get a meeting with the Supreme Court, little political humor.
Yep. That's excellent feedback, actually. Yeah, thank you both.
No, it is good feedback. There's a lot of nuance in here, and Linda, you can jump in at this point here if you wanted to talk about our the call we had an hour and a half ago. Also, it seems relevant at this point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Had a great chat, Michael and I did with Ken Evans of Connexial, and he has a couple of ways that he's addressing the industry, but the main thing that he says he wants to do, he has a patent pending to do it. And I had a chance to review that patent application, correct?
I did, yes.
Okay. Do you want to share whatever insights you had? I haven't had a chance to review it.
I can't say I would quote the patent at this point. I reviewed the pictures and the illustrations of it where it demonstrates the data sets that are required for the differentiation between market participants of shippers and carriers and drivers and tractors. But it seems that in this model or this specific filing, the uniqueness is related to the driver's availability, that all of the other assets of the truck and the trailer are in Ken's model a utility or a asset that's reliantly there, and that the driver and his hours of service are the determinant of whether it can take place. That if the driver doesn't have hours available when he gets to the location, that he can't move it. And for the most part, I agree with him, because as we've discussed, Jeff, and worked detail on the consummation, this load can be canceled by the shipper up until the time that the driver is there at the dock, backed up, doors open, ready to receive the load. They can say, no, sorry, I don't like the hole in your roof. Doesn't look like the patch is good enough. Your brakes were squeaky. And they can send that driver packing. And what Ken seems to have realized in his filings, as well as what I realized in mine, is that there's literally a driver and a dock worker that are the two people that are affecting this contract taking place at the dock. They're the only two who can consummate this. And he believes that his intellectual property is of unique thought and of not related to anything that was mine, and that he's never read mine. And I frankly told him that's nice, but it's really not very relevant, because what I'm looking to do is to see if we can find places where we can align. And
yeah, and he did say, how can I work with you, and how can we work together to fix the problem? So it went really, really well, considering that it could have been a bit of a my patent versus your patent type of match. But the reality
but
is,
again, that's why I bring it up that way, because
yeah.
I think it's important to realize that people need their voice with this. They've done a valuable work in that space. And, Ken wanted an opportunity to be able to, the first, Linda, I didn't time it, but what was it? The first 25 minutes of the conversation were rapid fire questions at me?
Yeah, pretty much.
And
but then
I answered them as directly as I possibly could and was candid and transparent. And then Linda asked some questions about how he uses his technology. And he basically said they're not deployed yet. They don't have a functioning system that's doing what their patent is for.
Yeah. And we did also share about the governance structure, and he seemed very impressed by that. And I feel will be a very vocal participant as he onboards. It's just a matter of what does that look like, when, and how does he come on as a participating entity if he doesn't have a currently existing monetized platform. So that's a question that we may need to address looking at this going forward. He's got an
what
idea.
He's saying
He's got
is
a
that
patent,
he currently doesn't do digital freight matching.
Right.
He's saying I don't have a platform that does that. No,
Yeah.
I don't.
And when you go to his website, it doesn't go through to actually being able to do business on it. It takes you to like their contact form, where you can get in touch. And he's saying the patent is going to drop any minute now. Before the end of the year. But how do we allow for participation of individuals like Ken, who have built a lot towards helping support this dynamic freight industry, and yet may not fit the model of they need a license to do business today?
I think we already have the place for him. He could be a contributing member today. He does not, with what he's currently doing. He's saying he's not processing transactions, and if he's providing a digital freight matching platform to someone, I haven't seen that yet, but that would be him being a reseller of the platform. So, it seems like the product of My 20 is based off of the location from the ELD of the driver and the load, and them connecting the actual driver from the ELD to location to here's the list of what that driver is that it could be tendered with. And whether it is semantics of they're making a match or they're not making a match, or they're getting paid for making a match, or they're just identifying the closest match that's available for them to make a match on their own. I'm not terribly concerned of the differentiation of that, except for how it affects the revenue model. And right now, the objective was to be able to build a communication with an industry leader that is frankly fighting the same battle that every other digital freight matching company is fighting, which is they've come up with a way to help solve this problem, but they by themselves can't solve the problem. They need everybody else that's being transparent and truthful. And right now, nobody's being transparent and truthful because everybody's collecting what the buy low and sell high is so that they can make the spread. And that's been their business forever. So for us to change that is going to require a revenue model that involves understanding what all of the moving pieces are, and they believe they've cracked that nut. So that's the summary of the call with Ken. It was real good. I'm looking forward to speaking with him again and to including him in on, you know, how we would invite somebody as a contributing member to working groups. I mean, we could onboard him as a contributing member, send him over the agreement and put him into working groups where he can put ideas in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I told David, and David's like, I'm looking at his website now. He's an infringing DFM.
Yeah, well, if he's doing matching, and right now he's, you know, he's questioning how that should be, but he also doesn't know what our solution is, right? I mean, right now it's the big scary thing. It's not $50,000 in an insurance policy that you won't be sued anymore if you share a piece of your transaction fees. And that may make him completely not scared anymore. Because right now he knows how many loads that he's done, and we don't know that information, but he does. So $50,000 to be able to solve that problem and have an insurance policy against the other things going forward for him, that's a big insurance policy when you've got another patent that's already been submitted that's right on top of this.
Or he may say, I'm pre-revenue on everything, and I don't want to pay you anything.
Well, we don't know if he's pre-revenue at the moment. I mean, I've seen him at trade shows for 3 years.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for that feedback. I would like to move on to the working group charters, just in interest of time. But if before I do that, I actually neglected in my haste to have the agenda approved. So, John and Linda, with your permission, are you okay if I just ditto your minute approval to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you. So we have the working group charters now to look at. These have very, very minor modifications. That is all. A word here, a word there. You've seen this for 6-8 weeks now. So I would suggest that rather than at this point parse words, because we've had an opportunity to do that, I'd like to go through them. And if they are not perfect, but for the most part, good to get the working group stood up, I'd like to move forward with a vote to approve the remaining working groups that are not stood up. So just
John has his finger up.
I'm sorry, what was that, Jeff?
John has his finger up.
Okay, John.
Speak, Sir John.
I have read these. They are, and therefore I would like to fast track this, they are fundamentally and materially correct that in the WGs, once formulated, the WG may identify a tweak or a modification based on, shall we call it, reality. For the purposes of framework, which is what we are involved in, I propose that all of the working group documents as released by Dr. McCurdy to ourselves several days ago, yesterday, and that I happen to have the opportunity to read through them and say to myself, given that I am the chair of this working group and I have these members, and these members are expert in this particular working group, or shall we say concerned participants, then I see no requirement to do anything other than approve them as seen for adoption as required.
Okay,
I'll second that.
Very good. Yes.
excellent.
We've been through them a number of times.
Yeah, we have. We certainly
Has
have.
anybody kept up with that number of times? Because it's been a number.
Yeah, it has been. I actually do have it when it was first presented, but thank you for that, John. So I had John as first and I had Jeff as second, just for the purposes of the minutes. And I completely agree, John. Yeah, this is, I think, an excellent starting point to get the group stood up.
Yes, for purposes of this record, may I suggest that you take account as follows. Motion proposed by John Greaves, seconded by Jeff Earl. Are there any objections? Hearing none, are there any abstentions?
I seconded it as well, so.
Then so be it. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Thanks for that, John. Okay, so hearing no objections, then we will consider this motion approved, and these will get recorded in the meeting minutes. So we will launch with these working group charters. Next
Which,
step.
by the way, helps us to be able to make it so that it's part of the documents when people land here. It is the
Yeah.
guidance for where their areas are. So thank you very much for getting that done.
Right.
And for the multiple iterations to get to here.
Yes. And the fact that they exist now, and therefore, of course, moving to next steps, right? Go ahead, Denise.
Yeah, moving to next steps. So perfect timing. So we have, now that the charters are approved, we have some tentative meetings scheduled for the ops and IT working groups. And you'll see them the 4th, the 17th, and the 7th. Their working groups are open to all members. However, in the interim, we're suggesting that we have, for the ops working group, chair is Jeff, that's already been approved. And that for the participants, we have Michael, Linda, Lisa, myself, and Mike and David is optional. That is for the next 3 until we have clients on board. Additionally, we have draft agendas for each one of these working groups. And I'll just take a minute to say that the agendas, the bullet points that you see here, are the inputs that come from the charters, which we had gone through previously. So in order for Jeff to successfully run a working group for operations, he will need certain things. And those things are going to help form the outputs that he's responsible for, communicating to the clients. And so Jeff needs to start thinking about the kind of IT performance scorecard he needs from Lisa, and the change management process he intends to follow, and how he's going to align across the DFMs, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was the thinking behind the draft agendas. I'll pause there for comments.
I think that's a good place to start.
Same here. You have operations working group. Yes, that's what they need to do to open. Next one, IT working group. Yes, that's what they need to do to open. No, there are no other performance reports needed that we're aware of. However, they may determine to produce reports in addition to and outside of this framework. Go ahead, have a nice day.
Right. Yeah, good point. Okay, I don't know that this actually officially needs a vote. I think this is more working business, but did want to share that with you. So you'll see that we are, now that the charters are approved, we have these tentative meetings set up. We will move forward and actually have the meetings and produce the meeting minutes and make certain that they get communicated on the command center as well as to the steering committee. And once we get going, then Jeff, you and Lisa at some point will be sitting in front of the steering committee, you with 2 hats on, and you'll be giving an officer's report. Like, here is the scorecard, here's the change management process, here's the training requirements that we think the DFM needs.
Denise, I think just because we're moving along in this meeting here, it might make sense for us to discuss the test data that's been put into the system currently and the movement to production at a point in time. There's pieces that you've been working on with IBM, I know from a SLA perspective, that I don't think that this committee has been made aware of.
Yeah, we certainly can.
Yeah, I do have one more thing on this page. Do we need to approve Lisa as an interim chair, or is that just appointed?
Well, I'm not certain that needs steering committee approval or not. On balance, I was thinking about that. Michael, are you fine with moving forward with Lisa as the interim chair for the working group, for the IT working group?
I don't see her in that capacity. I see her more from a product manager perspective. I mentioned this in the last call that we had talked about also, that, you know, it could be somebody more like a Michael Logic, but that hadn't happened yet. So I'm, you know, my experience with watching Lisa communicate directly with Deepak and Karen was leading me to concern of the assessment of their abilities to be able to deliver timely. It seemed that the cadence of instruction was not necessarily aligning with the capabilities of their development efforts, and it was the gap between them was shrinking too quickly, that I needed to step back in to be able to make it so that there was a gap between what they're supposed to be working on and what they are working on. And it's a hard thing to do, but in IT, you have to be able to have a scale scope of the today we're working on this, today this is being delivered, next week these are the things that are going to be developed, and we're working on the scope for that. And you have to be able to zoom in and out of each one of them. And I was more inclined to sit in that capacity myself until such time as I put somebody into that role, as opposed to putting the wrong person in that spot and setting them up for failure.
That's fine. I understand. Given that December 4th is, you know, we've got a short runway here, then shall I then place you as interim chair for the IT working group?
I think it's the only way that it works. I'm the only one who's communicating with the different elements. I mean, I could put Vic into that seat for a period of time, but he doesn't work with Deepak and Karen.
Right.
So
You want
there's
me to
nobody
get
else
back in
that
touch?
sits in each of those spots.
Do you want me to get back in touch with Michael Logic and see what his
I'd like to
openness
know how.
is?
I'd really like to know how his meeting went, or how his integration went with Koch Industries. I mean, that's
Yeah.
KBX and Andrew Teal.
Yep. Okay. Well, I'll just put a note to follow up with him, and maybe we can have a meeting set up with him right after Thanksgiving. Or actually, he gave me his phone number, so I can just call his cell and tag in. I might just do that.
Okay, I'll just mark that then as TBD at this time, and then I'll wait to hear whether it's going to be Michael or Michael, really, right? Which makes it fairly easy. Oh, before we turn around.
I don't think it can be TBD at this time. Put it in as me.
Okay.
I don't think that we can stand up the committee without someone being there as the one who's responsible for it. And at the moment, I need to make sure that this is transitioned to somebody who can do this job. And I don't know who's going to do that at this point in time. There is a role that is unfulfilled.
Okay, actually, that does make better sense, Michael. And to that end, we have a pricing call tomorrow with, as you know, Karen and Kurt. They are going to be there. They have most of the information that we need in order to provide the cost profile, which guys we're costing out what the technological solution will be. And I was happy to hear Karen say that no, they're definitely still on tomorrow, and they'll be in good shape. Okay, so
Happy for that too. That's good progress. It's a piece that IBM has historically been slow in delivering SLA pricing.
yeah.
So I'm glad that we're able to get them on the.
Yep. Yeah, that should be a good meeting. Anything else before we move off of this slide? Because there's one other thing I do need to talk about, the marketing working group. Michael, do you want me to let Lisa know? Because I think she was thinking that she might be the interim chair. Would you like to? I'm fine either way.
I think you can put her so that she's on the working group, but I don't think she needs to be as interim chair.
Okay, that makes sense.
So include her in the group, but
Okay, I'll circle back with her then. And then the marketing working group, we actually had two different proposals. We had our original one, that's what everyone has seen. And then David spent some time on this version here. Again, everyone has this deck if you need to spend some time. It's not greatly changed, but I'm going to suggest that we go with the proposed version 2 because time has moved on since we originally did the version 1. And to John's point earlier, yes, these will get assessed as the working groups get stood up. Any issues with having the version 2 marketing working group charter approved?
Nope.
Okay. So then we covered that one off. Michael, when you said the test data, did you mean the steering committee ideas, or did you mean like specific customers in the command center?
So it's kind of both. That there's a cleanup to be done within the command center for where we have literally gone in and made test data in our pre-production environment. And when we've made that test data, those are connected to accounts and to issues and to ideas that are now sitting in our working group and steering committees that are not real, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I need to go and delete those test accounts. And then we need to make a copy of the test data and associate it with the backup data set. But when we do that, all of these issues and ideas and steering committee things that have taken place are going to be gone. And what I was leading towards was what you and I talked about last time, Denise, which was the fact that you had these 2 pages of issues that had been escalated to, or ideas that had been escalated to issues that had already been done into the decisions that had taken place with the steering committee. And that we, within our platform, have the ability to literally complete each of these steps as the ideas and issues in the platform as being the roots of the entire system, and every decision that's been done from the get-go to be encapsulated into the system that we turn into the production environment.
Yeah. Okay. So just for context, guys, this is a 2-page document that Michael was just referring to. This is our approved decisions that we have made as part of our 13 steering committees. It's not the minutes. The minutes are separate, but this is just those decisions that we have made and approved, right? And this is from our very first meeting until I got a blank space here for today's. So Michael's point is, rather than have this on the Word doc in a Google, Drive somewhere, these should actually be placed into our command center underneath the steering committee. And I can pop into that real quickly so you can see where that is going to live. And I think that makes perfect sense. Right now, I do not have the ability. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share this new screen here. Okay, so those decisions that you just saw really should land here. And all of these are going to go away because these are just test data. And each one of these line items instead would be one of those decisions that we just saw on the Word doc. I do not have the ability, though Deepak knows it, to add these, but I will. And then, again, for transparency's sake, the steering committee decisions will be here, as well as those that are not approved. So they're all going to go here. So you'll be able to sort on the ones that were approved. I need to get back.
Does that make sense to everybody about the transition that we're going to be doing here for these?
Yes.
So if you have test data companies that you've made test data in the system, please send them to me so that I can go and delete them when time is right, just as an external action item from this meeting.
Say that again, Michael.
Any of those accounts that have been used to create test data like this, if you can send them to me, I can delete them. And when I delete them, I have an option to be able to get rid of the notes and ideas that come in. That's a function that I have in the test version of the system so that we can cleanse the data from the test information before we push it to live.
Okay, so certainly from a steering committee perspective, all of these can go.
Yes. It's what I
think that's my point also. I just need clarification of the fact that all these are garbage. There's nothing in here that's real. It's all the accounts that it was created for is.
then be done with it, wipe it, and put in the real stuff.
Yep, that's what we were thinking too. Just
And
to make sure everybody was aware that that's what we were going to go in and do. Is
I'm-
those issues and ideas are tied to those accounts, and I had them make a feature so that I could delete those test accounts and delete the issues and ideas.
yes,
Which made it so that I have an option to do that.
done.
Thanks.
Go ahead, John.
I think you just said done.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yes, I'm in my short form today.
All right. So it's good to see this progress. And now we'll get back with Deepak to find out when I can add those. But we are making, I think, slowly but surely we are getting there. And I think that was all on the steering committee. Was there anything else that anyone wanted to share? Any new business to bring up?
No.
Michael,
think
Linda, Jeff?
If I may, I think the business appears to be going well in terms of structure, form, and direction. I have a couple of questions not to be answered, simply to be pondered upon. Over the last several months, we have had the opportunity to be briefed by executive leadership in the matter of opportunity capture, everything from the Texas road trip, which somehow still sounds like a chuck wagon roundup, but through to the people from London, I think it was, who had the insurance angle they wanted to play, and a whole gamut of what one might call everything from trawlers to hangers-on to wannabes to could-bes. I wonder if, in anticipation of the next one of these meetings, where with work groups behind us, as it were, the meat of the bone, could we chew on that bone, please, at the next meeting and say, okay, here's our pipeline management, here's our opportunity capture, because remember, as Michael and others have already said, some of these are not in truth members per se, some of them are not revenue generators, they're co-revenators, for want of a better description. Can we put that on the agenda, please, and really get down to it? Because I tell you categorically, my own company, Consensus Health, I have just had, in amongst my illness, which was really not cool, to have to do this when one is already negative, and then to have to try and be positively negative. I have just had 2 weekend sessions last week, not this weekend, the weekend before and the one before that. In other words, at the height of my illness with my CEO. Now, they came out somewhat well at the end. I still work for them. But they also came out very disturbing, because what I did was what I just said. I asked for an audit of opportunity at a critical time, meaning we are now truly going to market. But I'd like to hear from the market-facing people, and they are, to my model, to my idea, Michael with what I call the co-revenator club, the marketing person, where are we with a client base and a pipeline that says this will close in January, this will close in March, this will never close because the door closed behind us, whatever. And incidentally, I am brutal, as if you didn't know. I am brutal in, it's why I've never been in sales, because if I was in sales, my model would have failed salespeople hanging from gibbets as you entered the corporate headquarters. So I can't do that, but I can be.
At various stages of decay.
Yes, sir. Yes, reflecting their failures over the decade.
Absolutely, along the way, and
Yeah,
and what where someone may fall into their.
Yes, and so just to say that, however, I can be, not, you understand when I use the word brutal, you all know me well enough to mean, no, I'm not going to scream F words down the phone at anyone, but to say I will be pernicious in my query as to, are you really thinking that there is 120 grand a month in this by March because Sue, who works in the accounts office, said so? I don't think Sue's authorized to put that note in the file. So let's make sure, to this John Larkin character, let's make sure that in having those in up our sleeve, Michael, that those sleeve notes are legit, are real, and have been tempered against the commentary you so honestly made today as to, you know, ghost data that might be placed by third parties to embarrass the party of the first party and ourselves, and so on and so forth. So much good speak today in that respect. I thank you for listening. I'm done.
Well, just to reply, because I know you weren't looking for a reply, and we're ahead of the meeting by 10 minutes, with still a few moments to be able to continue. I will share with you that over the past several weeks, as we've concluded the execution or the completion of our prepared documents, we have challenged our internal team to make customer reach out phone calls and to help categorize and differentiate the different participants from the industry. We've brought on a inside sales person who is specializing in the contact of these DFMs for the purpose of what their coverage areas are, what their equipment type is, and he is acclimating himself to the system. And I would offer one other point to that, which is that Jeff has been our top ranked user of the DFM Data Corp platform for entry and update. And I know that you don't get to be able to see all of that, and I would invite Jeff to be able to just spend 2 minutes. You won't even look for 2 minutes, sir?
You're on mute, John.
You're muted, John.
That's not really what I'm saying, Michael. Of course, at some point, I would enjoy an insight into the operational screen, as it were. But I'm also trying to be desperately focused. So my vigorous shaking of the head is not directed at Jeff, nor indeed at insight. It is actually simply to say, noted for later.
Yep, sounds good. Be looking forward to showing you the functionality that we've put together and that our team's been working on doing.
You bet. If I had doubt in the product, Michael, I wouldn't be here.
Well, I realize that, sir, and I so appreciate your support. And I was very concerned about your health over the past few weeks. It seemed as the last time we spoke was right as your birthday was taking place. I believe I was singing to you,
yes,
and you were still feeling.
I was dying in a corner at the time you were singing, and I find your singing to be not uplifting, Michael.
Okay, so we're going to stop the recording now for the sake of everyone else who might be.
I can tell you this, just to finish that comment I made about the discussion with my CEO and myself. The SWOT that I put together for Consensus Health, I'm afraid I acted quite, I'm going to call it maliciously, but I was deeply concerned. You see, remember, I'm from a background where I've sat on boards of directors as a non-executive director. It comes with enormous responsibility. You cannot, and you should not. I'm a fellow of the Institute of Directors. There ain't many of us across the world. Maybe 20 are fellows, and it's huge credentials and moral approval and ethical conduct and so on and so forth, which I'm very proud of. But when I'd finished the SWOT of my current company, as a non-executive director rather than a employee, I frankly would have been obliged to call for the board to remove the CEO, the chairman of the board, and file for Chapter 11. And
You've had quite a few threats.
I took